Please understand that listening to the contents of this audio podcast is not a substitute for actual legal advice. No attorney-client relationship or privilege is created by listening to this audio or the contents thereof. But anyway, the hell with this. Let's get started.
Okay.
So how was your morning?
It was a little bit of drama filled, but with a good result.
So I heard.
Yes.
We've been dealing with a follow-up drama to that, as a matter of fact.
Oh yeah.
Well, from the orders that stemmed from this morning's hearing.
Yes.
And well, let's just say that it's been a drama-filled afternoon.
Oh God. No, you know when there's like not much work on some days, and then everything happens on one day. So
Yes.
that's been today. Like every single potential client has emailed or called me today. Even friends that I haven't spoke to in months. Everybody decided to contact me today. So it's like okay.
Don't you hate that?
I hate it.
Everybody calls you all at the same time.
Yeah.
And then they get mad at you because you're busy and, you know, the way of the world. Okay, let me get my setup. We got started late. I'm so unprepared for what we were supposed to be doing. I usually have my screen and my notes all up, and I have physical documents along with the stuff that I sent you, and I'm trying to make the best of it. But here we are. Okay, you know what? This is as good as it's going to get. So, did you hear about the Alex Jones case?
I did on social media because of that video that's been going around when he is confronted about the text messages and also about talking, I guess, bad about the judge.
Oh yeah, they published her. The judge was on fire with flames, and like she was in the pits of hell. And this is justice for you in America, or whatever it was he was trying to promote on his show.
Yeah.
And have you ever had a client quite like Alex Jones?
Not a client. I had an opposing party, and
I've had one of those yesterday, as a matter of fact.
There you go. And it's interesting because it gets to the point that you're like, what am I going to do when you see the judge's face that they don't even know what to do with the person? Because it's like, it doesn't matter what you say. They are so into what they believe that it's pointless sometimes.
You know what happened to me yesterday? So I was talking to this guy. He had an attorney. And with his attorney, it was the one about the trucks, remember?
Trucks.
And we made him a deal, and the judge ordered all the trucks sold or whatever. So he fired his attorney. Okay. And then he starts off the conversation. I'm glad I got you on the phone. All my attorney cared about was money and my next paycheck, and he doesn't care about what's right. And I wanted to talk to you. He was like, okay, sir. And then he starts telling me about the house. Now, in this house, he signed an interspousal transfer, which made the family residence my client's separate property. And he doesn't think it's fair. And so he just says, I want my share of the house. And I had to stop him and said, well, sir, I see here that you signed an interspousal transfer. It's like, I don't care about your legal bullshit. I care about what's morally right. And it's like, well, I don't really care particularly about your opinions of morality. We have this, the law to contend with. And then he's trying to yell over me. And at one point I said, sir, it's not going to benefit either one of us for you to keep talking over each other. And so it's funny, at the end of it, he was all teary, tears in his voice. It's like he was starting to cry. He may or may not have been on a illicit substance, which I'm not going to comment on. But it was a bizarre phone call. And I imagine it would be similar to if I had to have a legal conversation on the opposing side of Alex Jones. But just to frame the picture, I mean, you mentioned that discovery portion.
Yes.
On the Alex Jones case. So there was a defamation case in the Sandy Hook. The defamation case was from the Sandy Hook parents who were going after Alex Jones for essentially saying that the Sandy Hook was a governmental conspiracy, and the parents were hired by the CIA to expound upon this conspiracy so that certain beliefs would expand upon the public. That's my uneducated synopsis of what he was saying. I'm not an Alex Jones follower, but that's essentially what they were suing him for. They never got to the merits of the case. You know why? Because him and his attorney were so abusive in their discovery practices that the judge issued terminating sanctions, and they lost the case by default.
Wow.
And if you're not aware, terminating sanctions is the worst of the worst things that could happen to you in your case. It's the judge essentially stating your conduct is so egregious, we're not going to allow this to proceed any further. I'm terminating the case and dismissing your claims with prejudice, which means you don't even get another crack at it. 99% of the times when judges dismiss a case, it's without prejudice, meaning bring it again. You weren't quite up to par this time. Let's try again another time. This time, no, with prejudice. You can never bring this case ever again. And to have your case lost in the discovery phase is one of the worst things that could happen to an attorney. It's the subject of many malpractice lawsuits. Lots of attorneys lose their bar license because of terminating sanctions, because you've lost your client the case. Now, I don't know anything about that part of it, but so when they were cross-examining Alex Jones on the stand, it was at the penalty stage of it. So he's already lost the case. They're just trying to figure out how much they're going to punish him for, right?
I didn't know that.
They get him on the stand.
I haven't followed the case.
Well, that's what that was about.
I just
it wasn't.
And I was like, oh.
And so it was. They weren't arguing guilt or innocence at that point. It was just all right, you've been found liable for these causes of action. How much are we going to punish you? So they're going through the discovery, and he's up there on cross-examination. And he was asked in discovery to turn over any documents that mentioned the words Sandy Hook, which would include documents, letters, emails, electronic messages, faxes, you get the picture, text messages. And so he responded in that email stating that, I'm sure it says something like, after a diligent search, nothing has been found, right? I have nothing in my cell phone, nothing in my possession that mentions Sandy Hook. So he doesn't comply with discovery, which if you do that and they find out about it, you could look like a real idiot, like this guy did on the stand. So what happens is they set him up. So do you remember us asking you the question? And he said, yeah, I remember you asking us the question. And we asked you if you had turned over all these documents, and you said that you had, right? Yeah, it's in the bed. I turned over everything I thought we had. I gave my lawyer my cell phone and said, go through it. So I assumed he was setting him up. And then he shows him an exhibit. The exhibit was a text message that referenced an article about Sandy Hook that he had sent to some guy, obviously discussing Sandy Hook. I'm assuming it was somebody from his radio, show or radio station, whatever. And his attorney does not object at that point. If this is your case and they're bringing in evidence that they're going to impeach you with, and it wasn't on an exhibit list, and it wasn't, you didn't know about it, you object. Even if you don't know what the objection is for. Objection, I was not given notice of this piece of evidence, or objection, this goes beyond the scope of cross-examination. Objection, this was not relevant to the issues, whatever, some kind of objection. But he lets it go. He asks him, do you recognize this text message? Yes, I recognize that text message. Okay. Your Honor, I'm publishing exhibit, whatever it was. And then he puts it on the big screen. Again, no objections throughout this whole thing. And it says right here, Sandy Hook article, if this information gets out, we're going to look really stupid. That said something to that effect. Doesn't it say that? Yes, it does say that. So then you're a liar. You lied to us about the Sandy Hook. I know that you're a liar because this is a text message that mentions Sandy Hook, but you told us he turned over everything. And then he mentioned something to the effect of, well, yeah, obviously we turned it over if you have it. It's like, ha, ha, ha. Well, let me tell you, your attorney screwed up because your attorney on accident sent us a digital copy of your entire cell phone record, some 300 gigabytes or something, not whatever. Somebody royally screwed up. How that came into their possession, I don't know. But they had it. Mm-hmm. And when the attorney had it, what are they going to do? Of course, they're going through all of his text messages and his pictures, and they went through all 300 gigabytes for sure.
Oh, yeah, they had
and they found all of the messages. Yeah, and so he gets him on the stand and he's grilling him. And the reason I know that you're a liar is because your attorney screwed up, and this is where we pulled the messages from, directly from your cell phone. And then Alex Jones said something, well, that's your Perry Mason moment, I guess, crucify me to the cross, I guess you got me. And when you're, I mean, he was obliterated on the stand in a way that I'd never seen. And what's worse, his attorney is sitting there because he's the one that screwed up. I mean, it honestly probably wasn't him. It was probably like his paralegal or something. And he didn't bother. But this guy, throughout the whole proceedings, I was watching bits and pieces of it. And I don't want to say he did a bad job because I don't know how I would have done. And I don't know what he was dealing with. Maybe he had a difficult case, but to not object in that moment. The other nail in the coffin is because they're dealing with Texas law. In Texas law, if there was an inadvertent transmittal of evidence.
Yes, that's the first thing that came to my mind when I heard that case. I was like, wait.
There's a way to file a protective motion. In Texas, I forget what the rule is in California, but in Texas, you had 10 days after the discovery of the transmission to file an objection and get some protection from the court, and then you would be fine. He didn't do that. But not only did he not do that, he was warned by this other attorney, by the prosecuting attorney, saying, I don't know if you meant to send this to us or not, but we were expecting like a 300 megabyte file and we got 300 gigabytes. You might want to take a look at that. So that's how they figured out that he had inadvertently sent. So he was told by the other side, he's like, okay, rather than file that motion, he didn't do anything.
Oh my.
But he tried to file a motion in the course of trial. And so he looked like an idiot for sending it over. And then he doesn't file the appropriate objection. And then at trial, he tries to file a motion, a protective motion at that point, at which case the prosecutor brings up the Texas code, which says, well, the objection was untimely. And so there's nothing I could do. I'm letting it in. So all 300 gigabytes of his cell phone was fair game, and they picked and choose. They took what they needed to. They ultimately got a $49 million verdict for the Sandy Hook parents, which, I mean, I tried my best not to watch any of it because some of the impact statement at their at the sentencing hearing was brutal. I mean,
I saw a little clip about it, and I remember that the mother, I think, was saying like, my son was real, like he was alive.
Could not even imagine. It was like it was just brutal. Anyway, some people believe in karma, and Alex Jones has had this coming for a long time. And well, I guess he got what was coming to him. In other news, there was this AutoZone case. I don't know if you heard about that, but it provided suitable seats from. It provided suitable seats for employees, but the second district says not so fast. I got to be honest, Illiana, I just don't give a shit about this case, and I'm not going to talk about it unless you have something.
No, I read it, and I had no idea.
No, I read it, and I had no idea about that labor law.
Good for them, I guess. Like, fix your chairs. What do you want from me?
I don't know. It's a weird.
So there was an article that came out on August 8th, and it talked about attorneys of color, of which you and I are both attorneys of color. It's debatable whether or not I'm colorful or not because I'm fairly light-skinned. But most would say on my birth certificate that I'm an attorney of color, although I'm very gringo-ish, white-ish, But there was an article that came out and it says that attorneys of color remain underrepresented in California's legal profession. The data is this. White people comprise only 39% of California's adult population. It's about right. But they account for 2/3 of the state's active attorneys, according to diversity data released by the California State Bar. Although that discrepancy isn't quite as stark as it's been in previous years, State Bar data from 2020 reported that white people constituted 40% of the state's population and 70% of its attorneys. It indicates that people of color continue to be underrepresented in the California legal profession. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I was looking at the specific numbers about Hispanics.
Well, I was looking at the specific numbers about Hispanics and Blacks, and I had an idea, but I didn't know the exact numbers. And knowing that there's 36% of Hispanics here,
Yeah,
but only 6%,
which is problematic because,
are attorneys.
by the way, I'm
that's
supposed to do introductions, and I apologize I didn't. I'm going to do them right now. I am joined by my colleague, Illiana Colon Rosa.
Okay,
She is the
go ahead.
owner of Colon Rosa Law, and she represents people all over the Inland Empire. She's a Spanish speaker, family law attorney, immigration attorney, probate attorney, civil litigator, criminal defense practitioner. She passed the bar she went to law school in Puerto Rico, and she passed the bar in July of 2013. And although she's been around the legal field for basically the last 10 years,
Yes.
which is when I passed the bar, I think we passed the same bar exam, to be honest with you. July 2013? Did you take it in Ontario too?
Probably.
In Puerto Rico,
Well, in
the bars.
no, in Puerto Rico, the bars actually give it in another month. It's, I think, November.
I remember I passed right after
In
graduating,
March,
so
something like
it was
that. I
probably-
remember I passed right
No,
after
July.
graduating,
July
so
and November,
it was
so I
probably
passed the one in July.
Well,
no, July.
congratulations.
It was July
The
and
point
November,
being
so
that
I
you are
passed
now
the
a
one in
practicing
July.
attorney, and you represent a significant portion of the Hispanic members of the Inland Empire, specifically Spanish speakers. And as you well know, having worked at the same firm that we did, that you and I both worked at, there are a significant number of Spanish-only speakers that desperately crave good Spanish speaking representation, where you've played a vital role in filling that need. And so, speaking from that perspective, and what you just said to me, that only 6% of the population of Hispanics are actually attorneys and available to help, and what percentage of those are competent attorneys, are not trying to swindle them out of money, because immigration is ripe with that kind of stuff. What do you have to say? What do you think about that? When you see these numbers, what does it bring to mind?
That is what I'm doing, what I do.
That is what I'm doing, what I do. It's
mind blowing to me how underrepresented
the Hispanics are, and I will say maybe like 99% of my clients are Spanish speakers, and most of them don't know English at all. And I see it all the time in courts, people that are being self-represented and they're using a translator, and they have no idea about the laws in California. And it's just so sad to see that. And
Well, let me ask you this. How many times have you spoken
I
to
don't know how
somebody
we can
looking for
change
help
this.
that has a criminal case and they're trying to get their papers adjusted, and they tell you, well, I went to this attorney and they said, all I got to do is get an expungement and then I could get my green card. And then you have to look at them and say, well, actually, but that's always their understanding about it, right? And I don't know if that's just because I never know whether or not they were properly advised. I suspect they might have been, and they just misunderstood, because that's an easy thing to screw up. Except when I've spoken to those people directly myself, I always say, look, if you think this is going to help you get your green card, it's not. They're still going to be able to see it. It's just going to show dismissal. They're still going to see the arrest. They're still going to see the correction, and it doesn't erase it for immigration purposes. I just want you to know that before you give me your $2,000 to expunge this case. And then when I say it like that, it's like, well, I guess maybe I'll save my money. So maybe I should stop saying it that way.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
I think sometimes they just don't understand. Sometimes they
a paralegal
think that they're talking to an attorney, but it's actually a notary or a paralegal, yes, and they're given bad advice. And sometimes I think it's because, and this I see it a lot, is that they mix the laws of where they come from with the laws of California, and they come up with these ideas of how stuff should work. Especially, I see it in divorces where people ask me if home, what's it called?
Yes.
That's like my number
Abandonment.
one thing.
That's like my number one thing in divorces that people ask me about. If they leave a marriage, they can be criminally accused of home abandonment. And I know that comes from other places and other countries where that is a thing, but it's not here. But they come
Yeah, I
with
get that question a lot.
knowledge, and they think it applies here. Nobody corrects them. The neighbor thinks it works out the same, and here they are. And I don't know. It's really sad. But
What do you tell people when they ask you that
what
question?
I'm here for. It's to help that community.
And you can leave.
Oh, that
whenever
doesn't
you
exist
want
here.
for any reason.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
you can leave
Yes,
whenever
ma'am.
you want for
Well,
any reason.
from my perspective,
Yes.
I'm looking at these numbers, and these numbers are nothing new. And they have gotten significantly better, say, from like 1960s, 1970s. But it's a deeper problem than it's a diversity issue. And diversity is a very complex. There was a time and place where I was going to study socioeconomics in my pursuit of that degree before I switched to business. One of the things that I learned is that the socioeconomic status of people makes a significantly bigger difference than just simple diversity. Like, for example, there are disenfranchised people that are sitting in socioeconomic places and they don't have they don't have the connections or the ability to stay up, because when you're starting on a lower economic rung, it's difficult for you to get up. And if you're starting from the bottom as it is, it's like a pyramid scheme. There's already people at the top. And you got in late to the game. And so good luck making your way. And that's really kind of what minorities are dealing with, whether it be from the Black community or the Hispanic community, or any minority, really. You're starting from the bottom up, and you have to work your way into a system that's already densely networked. And so it's not a matter, I'll tell you what it's definitely not. It's not because law schools are racist or the California bar exam is racist. They can't control that. They will give a attorney's license to anybody that passes the bar. What's difficult is getting somebody qualified enough to take that bar exam and pass. You have to have an undergraduate degree, and then you have to get yourself into law school. And getting yourself in law school, at least in the States, usually means you have to take the LSAT and you study and go through this whole thing, and you got to score high enough, and then you get yourself a scholarship or not. And by the way, law school costs like $200,000 nowadays for 3 years of school, which is not that much. It was cheaper when I went,
Expensive.
but it's more expensive now, but it's cost prohibitive. So unless you get a scholarship, you're probably not going to want to go, because you don't want to graduate with $200,000 of student debt. And so it's people have different priorities. And for those that can afford to stop working for 3 years, and they get a scholarship, they're usually these people that grew up in the best of the best environments. They have 4.0 GPAs, went to private schools. They got 170 plus LSATs, and they're in a position to do that, which does not spell the situation for the majority of the underrepresented community. And I can tell you that one of the criteria that law schools used to look at least when I was applying, is whether or not you are an underrepresented minority. I feel like, well, I don't feel like it was the case that if that was you, it gave you a leg up on other people. They were trying to make it easier for you to get in. And so, which I don't know, I don't really have too many opinions about that. It spells to these thoughts of affirmative action, whether or not you think it works. I personally don't believe that it works. In some cases, it was necessary. Yes. I'm not educated enough to have that conversation. I just know that the law schools themselves and the State Bar Association are not trying actively to prevent people of color from obtaining a law license and practicing law. Matter of fact, they're doing the opposite. And I think there was even some cases not too long ago where they cracked down on law schools, making whether or not you were an underrepresented minority part of the criteria for the admissions process. So anyway, my take on all of this is it's a lot more complicated than it seems. And is it going to change anytime soon? No, but it was part of the daily news. And so there it goes. There was this throwaway, not a throwaway case. There was this case where this man, Jose de Jesus Quiroz, I don't even know how to pronounce that.
Yes.
I'll take your word for it. I'm not going to try to say it like that. Quiroz. He was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison, I believe, for sexually abusing elderly folks, which is a nice thing to know if you're trying to enroll great grandma into the nursing home. Which I don't know about you, but I have some grandparents who may or may not be on deck for those kinds of services. And they say, oh, it's so great. And they charge you like $4,000 a month, $5,000 a month to get round the clock care. They get like this nice little community.
It's a lot.
But for some of these homes, you get these people that are literally preying on these people. I mean, the elderly and the mentally disabled. Yeah, I don't know what specifically this guy did. It doesn't go into a whole lot of details, but it just seems like if you're doing something like that, you should get a lot more than 2 years. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think 2 years is a little bit.
I think 2 years is a little bit.
Yeah.
I would have given him like 8
to 10 years.
At the minimum. Like when I saw 2 years, I was like, only 2 years? Like for other stuff, they give you a lot more than that. I mean, even for other like more simple, very simple criminal offenses, and then sexual abuse to an elderly person, and you were given this.
Well, 2 years, he's going to do it again.
I don't know.
I mean, if he's not doing it in the confines of employment, he's doing it somewhere else, and you know. Who knows? I don't even want to begin to. I mean, I've seen some bad people, but you know, those that will abuse the elderly like that, the incapacitated in a sexual way, it's disgusting and worst of the worst. What'd you say? But 2 years.
It's a whole other level.
Do you believe in chemical
it's a whole
castration
other level.
for people like him? Chemical basically castrating him.
What is that?
Not like, well, sort of like a dog, but like they do it chemically where I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how it works, but they essentially shut off that part of your brain so that you don't have any sexual desires or whatever. It's just completely, you're dead. Not dead, but you're asexual for the rest of your life.
Oh.
These
I mean,
extreme cases.
I know you don't like giving your opinion very
extreme
often.
Cases,
so I'm trying to get you to make a opinion about something very specific.
No, but it's
no. I mean, when
it comes. No, I mean when it comes, because the first thing that comes to my mind is it's an extreme measure, and is it really necessary in all sexual?
Maybe in the
abuse cases,
recurring people,
maybe in the extreme cases, in recurring people, maybe that's something that is going to help them from doing it again.
I don't know.
But if there's a one-off,
I think if you're abusing elders, I'm okay if you get sexually castrated. To be honest with you, chemically or otherwise, physically. If you want to go old school with it, let's go old school with it. Children, violent rapists, people that abuse the elderly or the mentally ill, yes. Borderline cases, which I'm not even sure what those would be. I don't know. I guess if there were other cases that you could think of where they don't deserve that, I don't know. But in the case of Mr. Quiroz, I would say that he would deserve it. I think we might have lost Illiana. We're going to stay on the air. She's going to log back in. I guess I'm solo for right now. She'll come back up.
Yes.
Illiana, are you with us? I was going solo for a minute, but I was introducing the the next article, we had that discussion last week about gender identity.
Yes.
And it used to be a very simple issue. There's male and there's female. And the LGBTQ community has been very vocal in making sure that we acknowledge that there's way more than two identities. And we said a lot of things on that show. I don't know if you saw this one or not, but the Attorney General, Rob Bonta, he joined a 16-state coalition in the filing of an amicus brief to oppose Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, the one that was authored and propounded by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. What do you think about that?
Well, to start off, I hate Florida, but Florida has the craziest.
You used to live in Florida, right?
For a year, yes. I did my high school last year, 12th grade, and my first year of college over there at UNF. And then I moved back to Puerto Rico. But Florida has some special people, including their representatives. And I have heard about this Don't Say bill many times. I just don't understand why it's necessary. But when I saw the article that you sent me, I was like, okay, I mean, I don't even know what they're fighting this.
Well,
but
first of all, for people that don't understand what an amicus brief is, it has no legal effect of anything other than to issue further persuasive argument to the judges that are going to be making decisions on the pending case that involves that law. And so it doesn't mean anything. It's just 16 states joined in to say that they don't support it. And this is the reasons why. And I'm sure I haven't read the amicus brief, but there's case law on there and they cite different things, precedents, whatever, to try to help the judges make the right decision. What do I think about the Don't Say Gay bill? I mean, I feel like it's unnecessary, same as you. I really don't care if my children are taught that there are people that identify differently, male, female, I don't know. I don't really understand why it was authored other than for political gain.
Exactly.
I feel like this issue has been brought about, and this is kind of like the destructive, like the Josh Hawley interview of that Berkeley professor from last week. How she was so quick to say, you're asking this question, you were inciting violence upon transgender folks. And then she's going all like high strung on him and just like out of left field. This is kind of the pushback to it. You guys want to be ridiculous? Then we're going to be ridiculous. And you know what? We're just not going to say gay in schools. We're going to eliminate it completely. So where one extreme builds up, the opposing extreme shall join and they will clash. And we're going to find some middle ground somewhere. Where that middle ground lies, I don't know. But it's a lively discussion currently taking place. What's your knowledge? What's your opinion about Mr. Ron DeSantis being a former Floridian yourself?
He's just a little bit out there, but I mean, he fits in Florida. So I don't know. He's a personality. So I don't know much about him other than what I hear in the news. But the little I have heard, I was like, okay, this guy's a little bit crazy.
Well, in my opinion, I think he's a clown.
Exactly.
And that's all I'm going to say about the guy.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect description.
So that's when I was an interesting article that came out. Yeah, as a follow-up to our discussion from last week. But we're going to move on. I have been